Welcome. It's really nice to be part of this process of trying to help to discuss with districts and leaders about digital access for schools. Um, Whether you like it or not, this is the way. Okay, so this is where we're going. The world is going digital, and we need to make sure that we're aware of this because we have to be aware. There is no question that technology is changing the way people interact with the world and just perform many of our everyday tasks. Now, I mean, you're all well aware of this. You can order, we've ordered groceries, purchase airline tickets, you can apply a job. Some of you have found the love of your life through a computer, a tablet, or the use of a smartphone. It's amazing what we have in the palm of our hand and when we use these devices, things like this. But what I want you to think about is that the problem is, just imagine, we take it for granted, but imagine while visiting a school's website, you're suddenly unable to read or cannot get a clear description of the programs available. Perhaps, for some reason, you cannot use a mouse to navigate around a website, or you're unable to complete schedules, okay? This frustration is a reality for many individuals with disabilities who use the internet just like everyone else to access the world. And what's interesting about this is why we're talking about this. When accessibility is overlooked during your digital design process, not only are there many websites, mobile applications, and documents that are unavailable, but the online experience can become a source of incredible frustration and alienation. And so it's interesting is the perceptions that people have of your district can come through your website. And they will say, oh, that's not a good district. And it can be based just on their user experience they have, okay? Their user experience, okay? So digital experience, let's talk about this. Digital accessibility is the practice. And you're gonna hear, we've got some patent pod experiences on this, we've got others who are talking about this as and we'll give you more guidance on this as we go through this. Is the practice of making all web and digital interactions content accessible to everyone, right? Really, in order to be successful, schools must consider many interrelated components, including how front-end users interact with back-end development to create an accessible digital landscape. By reviewing how users interact with content, including the assistive technology that we all employ for individuals with disabilities, content creators can author information in a way that supports all users' interactions. Throughout this process, and I mean throughout this whole process, schools must continually evaluate and ensure that people with disabilities are involved as co-authors, as they can help best problem solve. But we'll talk about that in a few minutes. There are creative ways of meeting digital accessible needs, and organizations need to take the time to record this, okay? So let's talk about the case. Let's talk about this, why. This is really why we're doing this. As with most initiatives, and this is clearly an initiative that we need to take seriously, because the individual number of populations of individuals with disabilities is growing. And through the whole COVID experience, we all experienced a variety of things where we had to make sure that there was accessibility for individuals. But as with most initiatives, there's a certain level of justification required for organizations to dedicate the staff time and resources towards a project. This is what we're building the case for. But I want to talk about the current laws and trends that schools can use to make compelling cases to support the initial and not just the initial, the continued investment in digital accessibility. In addition to legal requirements, the rationale can speak to an organization's business sense, their values, or even just how people are perceive this. I mean, actually, it's our marketing play. Let me give you some background. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 prohibit discrimination against people with disabilities and require reasonable accommodations. These reasonable accommodations extend to the digital realm. But just make sure, and we're talking about a law from 1973 and one from 1990. So let's talk about more current stuff. Since 2000, more specific policies around digital information have been written into the law. In 1998, Congress amended the Rehab Act in order to require federal agencies to ensure that electronic and information technology is accessible to people with disabilities. In 2010, President Obama signed the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act into law, which updated federal communication laws to increase access to modern communication services and equipment. Since 2010, there have been a slew of court cases that have raised against schools for inaccessible websites. There have been mainstream individuals swept up into these legal issues. Right? For instance, remember correctly, the singer Beyonce, her website was sued for allegedly not providing equal access to users with visual impairments. So this onset of court cases have caused schools to audit and eventually revamping their sites to be more compliant, which is a good thing. Adhering to the law around digital access is good, as well as the fear of becoming the next legal lawsuit, may be motivation schools need for change to take place. Okay. But finally, it's not just laws. Just make sure you understand this. Embracing accessibility can drive schools and organizations to do more innovative work. Accessibility is closely linked to just general usability. I mean this literally, as both components focus on providing human-centered and intuitive digital experiences. I mean, just building on this, allowing individuals to participate, it is just good. And this talk about this, there is a myth out there, and it's a myth, by the way, that accessible designs means boring, when in fact, constraint often breeds ingenuity. So we're going to talk about this and how you can extend this knowledge and extend what we're talking about as a part of this, okay? But there's many accessibility features which are aimed at removing specific barriers for some, right? Actually deliver, and it's what's important about this, actually deliver a more universal user experience for people with all abilities, okay? And that's something we need to pay attention to, okay? It is simply universal design in the digital space. Many of you have heard about UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, as a part of instruction of individuals with disabilities in schools. This is taking it to the digital space and ensuring that we are able to allowing others to access and allowing others to participate. Okay. So let me just give you an example. Let me just give you an example and talk about this. Consider, like, I'm a heavy relier on the autofill functions on my web browser. I don't remember, and my wife probably is after me about this, that I don't often remember my credit card numbers, but autofill will gladly do this, or my email address, or my address, and some of these things. Autofill does these things. Okay. Consider this: when the autofill function in a web browser, where its content is automatically added. If you haven't tried this, just go out and do this. Added to the form or field according to information you've entered in the past. Now, it's a little strange that my computer remembers all these things, but no one else touches my computer. This application, what do you want to understand? Where does this application come from? I want to make sure you understand this. This application was initially designed for users with disabilities who needed support inputting information, but now it's been widely adopted across a lot of browsers and applications. So you have to think about this. There are a lot of things that are designed for people with disabilities that are benefiting us. I mean, just the whole concept of closed captions. It was not designed for individuals who are hearing, but I benefited at the gym this morning to close captions. So it really did help me. It was beneficial. Could still be listening to my music as I'm sweating, but it's really interesting. This embedding accessible design practices can lead to innovative thinking and creative problem solving. So it's just good for communication, and that's something we need to pay attention to. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay. So what I talk about this, okay? What about the argument that an organization may not need to make changes to their website because they have not received direct complaints? Well, what's interesting about this, pay attention to this. There was a study done a few years ago that found that rather than complaining, that many individuals with disabilities will actually just click away from the website if they find it difficult to use, because that's the standard in many places. So if your school is not receiving complaints from individuals in the disability community about your website, it may be because they simply are not using it. So keep this in mind as we talk about this, okay? Keep this in mind as we talk about this. So, all right. So what about the continued investment in accessibility is a law, but is also good for business and brand visibility of schools for both tangible and intangible reasons. Accessibility should be embedded into school services and culture, should be embedded in everything. We'll talk about this. All right. So, and focus on building a better experience for all users. Because remember, when we flipped to going virtual, when the COVID hit a little about 3 years ago, actually 2 years and 11 months, but 3 years ago, that we had to do a lot more with computers and a lot more of online learning for some kids. And we were not good at this. And I'm not talking about it. We got better. We got better. Many of you didn't even know the word Zoom or understand Zoom or a platform like Zoom prior to this. But it has allowed people with disabilities to participate in worlds that they never thought before. The accessibility features. There are individuals with physical disabilities who were not coming to meetings because they could not leave their house, or with health issues, they could not leave their house. They're now participating in meetings, and it's great. And so we have to think about this and keep this in mind about this. Okay. So now that I've made just a basic case for this, okay. Well, I can go further if you want. Wait, hold on, Will. It's amazing how many times I've talked with kids who are having trouble accessing their Chromebook or accessing their iPad. They have nice supports, a nice person who are at home, good Wi-Fi, but the person who they spend their time with is a grandparent. And not that I'm disparaging grandparents, and I'm really trying not. I'm not doing this to experience. Okay, okay. So is interesting about this is dealing with the issues of making sure that it's accessible for everyone. Because there are some individuals who have difficulty seeing, difficulty maneuvering websites. So keep this in mind. Okay. So let's talk about how people did just basically access digital tools. Okay. The internet, broad as it may be, has opened up pathways to wealth of information for people with disabilities in all sorts of ways. Example, okay? Just take email. Okay, just take email. Quickly grew in popularity among people with hearing loss because it allowed them to experience themselves easily and receive messages quickly and accurately. Okay, and seriously, we rely on email, and your email address has been part of your identity. Okay. Why I talk about this is that people talk about email as being one of the greater interventions that no other real single intervention since the printing press in the 1400s has been more revolutionary or impacted societally than the internet. It really is. What you can do on the internet is huge. The opportunities, the availability of services, what we have there. Okay? This has been more, but it has been more revolutionary for some than for others. Let's think about this. There are many who've historically faced barriers. Many for historically faced barriers to accessible information, including people who are blind or have low vision, okay? Or those who have limited movement. There's individuals with speech disabilities, photosensitivity, or other combinations, okay? Just for others, ordering groceries to communicate with friends or communicating with friends, there's a great potential for the web to improve everyday tasks for members of the disability community. This is important. Okay. This is sad, though. Keep this in mind. Despite the fact that individuals with disabilities can most benefit from the expansion of the internet and it's associated all the different wonderful things that it can associate. Just think about how iPhones and Android phones have evolved just in the past 5 years. These are individuals who are not because of iPhones or Androids, but the internet on barriers on the internet are most commonly affected by web accessibility. And that's what we have to think about. A recent study, 2016, found that only 40% of American adults with disabilities are comfortable going online, as opposed to 60% of adults without disabilities. Why? Why is this the case? It's because the websites, when they go online or are using apps, are sources of frustration. And this poses a problem. It's frustration, and they get anxious about it. They get worried, and therefore, when they don't go online, for lack of a better term, a digital divide is created, and it poses problems for them. As more commerce and information moves to online and digital platforms, the divide widens to become an unequal disparity in experience with far-reaching social, economic, and educational implications. So keep that in mind as we talk about it. So the great thing though, and this is where we're going to talk about this, there are tools, there's technologies and systems being created that are aimed at making the digital experience more accessible and equitable for users with disabilities. And so what I want to make sure you understand this is there is no such thing as an average person with a disability. Each and every one of individuals with disabilities are an individual. And they don't choose to have a disability. They have a disability often at no fault of their own. So we have to think about this and we have to pay attention to this and address this issue, right? And so when we talk about this, the individualization that is necessary to assure that they have an opportunity to participate in society is vital. And it's vital that we share the information and be part of this. So, but people with disabilities, just like people who do not have a disabilities, navigate the web in a very different number of ways. Some of you have thousands of tabs open on your browser. Okay, you know who you are. Some of you only have one. You just click to the next one and click to the next one. Some of you have multiple desktops or different monitor setups, things like this. There are a variety of ways, and there are many different ways of how people are comfortable with doing this, and pay attention to this. Okay, and it depends on your preferences. It depends on your needs. Depends on your abilities. All right. I need to only have one thing open at a time, or I'm distracted. It just happens. Okay. Someone may adapt out there, someone may have adapted ready-made hardware and software and to help meet the access requirements, while others may need specialized tools or to complete certain tasks that they need, okay? But what we have to think about is just basically using assistive technology to allow individuals and to access digital content. It's vital, it's important, and it's something we need to pay attention to. So this talk about assistive technology, just so we all have an understanding of this. I'm not trying to talk down to anyone. I'm just trying to ground us as we talk about this. Assistive technology is any piece of equipment, software program, or system that strengthens the learning, working, and daily living for people with disabilities. That's it. It may be a digital piece. It may not be a digital piece. I mean, crude measures. I mean, there are some individuals with autism. Assistive technology is putting a rough side of Velcro underneath their desk and rubbing that periodically for the sensory and doing something. There's no computer chip involved in that. Some individuals, it's a grip on their pencil so they can actually hold it better. Something assistive allows persons to build on this. Adaptive strategies are techniques employed by people with disabilities to improve interaction with digital content. Okay? So when we think about this, there's things like social stories and visual schedules are examples of assistive technology used by people with cognitive disabilities to help them understand what's going on and where they're functioning. So there's things like some of you, and as I get older and rapidly approaching a milestone in age, the ability to increase text size is wonderful. It's wonderful, especially on my watch. So I don't often use my glasses when I'm out with it. And so the ability to increase text size is amazing. Little things like this go a long way towards assisting individuals and help people with disabilities participate, okay? Or the use of closed captions, which I mentioned just a few minutes ago, are examples of adaptive technologies that offer support when accessing content. Just basic things like this are really good, okay? But we should make sure we understand, just reiterate this. When you think of assistive technology, we often think of really high-end, high-tech stuff. But assistive technologies and adaptive strategies can be not only high-tech, but they could also be low-tech. And that's something we have to pay attention to. They are dependent and completely and totally dependent on the individual needs of the person with a disability in certain circumstances at that time. It may change. It very well may change. And that's something we have to pay attention to. So why I say this, and I want to emphasize the individualization necessary of this. There is not one technology or there's not one single strategy for digital access. There's many diverse tools and there's many diverse approaches that support a variety of needs and disabilities and help with this. Why I say this? The ways in which information is accessed depends on a person's individual needs and requirements. Okay. So keep that in mind as we talk about this. All right. And pay attention to this. Okay. So let me keep going as I address this. Okay. And I'm going to talk about 4 different ways. Okay. And so, okay, 4 different ways that we access things like this. And it depends on the user. Okay. Depends on the user. There's 4 different things. Okay. And I want you to think about each and every one of these when you're accessing and paying attention to this. Okay. First one is, and you can see perception, presentation, input, and interaction. Each one is very different, but each one provides guidance. Perception, think about this. People perceive content through different senses. You see, hear, feeling. Think about this. Perception is dependent on ability and preferences and past experience. Right? Oftentimes, it's necessary for someone to convert content from one sensory format in order to into another in order to help them perceive and understand that information better. For example, a person who is deaf may need to convert audio content like verbal speech into visual format of ASL. Like as someone who's blind may need to convert visual information into tactile or audio components. Getting the gist on this? Some assistive technologies to support people to better perceive content are like, for instance, screen readers or braille displays, which convert the visual text of a website, an app, or digital document into synthesized audible speech or braille text. Right? Here's a good example, and many districts have access to this. Adobe Illustrator supports people to perceive content in a modified way with a built-in color blindness inspector. It really does help. Okay? This color blindness proof setup module, it was implemented in 2009. And what it does, it allows graphic designers to preview their work in the same way a red-green colorblind individual might see it, and thus ensure graphic information is accurately conveyed to people with color blindness. Okay? Most people don't think about perception as a part of this, but you have to think about this and have to think about the needs of the person with a disability as a part of this. Okay. And it's vital we pay attention to this. Okay. Now let's talk about the second one, presentation. Okay. Okay. So I'll walk you through this one. In order to make content easier to distinguish and understand, some individuals may need to adjust the ways in which information is presented to them. This is okay. This is primarily just basically because people perceive information differently. It's very basic. Adjusting how content is presented can be achieved by altering its appearance in a variety of different ways. Example, like changing the font type. There's fonts that are not good for reading. Yeah, I can't dispute that one. Color contrast or spacing of text to make it more legible, or pairing information with a symbol or other graphic to represent different learning opportunities. So someone who needs more visual information. Yep. I'm not trying to identify learning styles. Make sure it's not that. It's about learning preferences. Assistive technology that supports people to better distinguish content is screen magnification software, which enlarges text or images to make it easier for people with low vision to identify. An adaptive strategy is including captions or pieces of audio information put into text form or even a video piece. There are ways to get that done as a part of this. Okay, so there's ways to help with this. Okay, and that's important, and we can't negate that. The next one is input. Just think about it. If you look at this, there's 4 steps as part of this, and you have to keep each and every one of these in mind. When you enter information on the web, wherever you may be, or you activate a command, what you do is you are interacting with the web in a different way, and it's individualized to the person. It's absolutely individualized to the person, and that's something we need to pay attention to. This is important to keep in mind while designing all digital interfaces. I bet all of us can talk about frustrating times where we've been asked to enter information and then it doesn't allow us to continue because we didn't enter it the way that they needed it to. Many of us can think about when we go to new websites or make new purchases and we have to establish a password, which is often 8 characters with a case of combination of capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, symbols, and they're just combinations of this. I had one where I typed in for 45 minutes. Okay? 45 minutes trying to get into this website. And it would not allow me to get in because it did not tell me the requirements for what needed to be for a password. We all have experienced these things, all right? If not, you need to get out more often and pay attention to these things like this, okay? But think about this. While some people, I'm fairly comfortable using my hands, fairly comfortable to be able to access and command a keyboard and computer, things like this, all right? There are some others, and put this in mind, okay? They require a keyboard only. They can only use keyboards due to cognitive or visual disabilities, or entirely hands-free operations. There are some individuals who just are entirely hands-free due to physical disabilities. This also could be a preference. I'm a huge fan of my trackpad. I want to put something else in front of me, I kind of get stymied. I even like the direction of my trackpad. It's different from the way my wife is. When I use her computer, it just befuddles me. The spelling tools also help correct text, or sometimes not correct it, or correct it the wrong way. Many of us probably experienced this. Okay? Or necessity, using voice recognition software with a manual keyboard or mouse use is an impossibility. Okay? Think of that. But some assistive technologies that support diverse input techniques are alternative keyboards with like larger size keys or custom layouts, curve for the opportunity for people to participate, or voice recognition software that can be used to issue commands to a computer or mobile device. I have an Apple Watch, and it's amazing how many times I interact with Siri when I'm not necessarily wanting to, but it's something that we all have experienced as a part of this, and typically when I'm doing presentations. And so it's something we have to pay attention to as a part of this, okay? The last part is interaction. And you think this is the big thing, but look at the other three. They're all part of the process. They're all part of the process. And that's what we have to think about as well. The ways that people search for content on a digital platform varies greatly and depends heavily on the user's preference, ability, and skill. For instance, someone navigating a website on their mobile device may require more orientation cues or menu navigations than someone searching the same website on their own computer. Okay? I plug my computer into a very large monitor. Very large monitor. It allows me to see all sorts of information. When I'm doing the same thing on my phone, just a tad frustrated. Okay. Think about this. Think about this as someone who's looking at all the information on a Chromebook, and they're used to a bigger monitor. It may pose problems, or they're using their phone, and it pose problems. Okay. You may need to provide clear guidance to find information that someone is maybe not be familiar with using it on a different device. So how digital interactivity or website guides a user to find certain information is known as usability. This is important. Using descriptive headings is a way to organize content in a very clear and consistent manner, enables users with low vision to easily move through content on a website or app. It really is important. Another one is to allow sufficient time for visitors to interact with digital media, be it things that move too quickly, or a tablet giving ample time before it times out. We've all probably experienced this where we've experienced issues where you have a certain amount of time to enter information. You've entered part of it, you have to get up, take the dog out, come back, and it's timed out, and you have to enter all the information again. For some individuals, that is exhausting. But think about this. There's many different ways that we all interact with it. Now, these different ways we've been talking about interacting. That's by no means a complete and total list. I'm not trying to stretch the imagination on this. But what they're doing is help you build an understanding of the user experience with digital media and can shed light on the barriers to digital content commonly facing people with disabilities. This is important. Okay. Furthermore, I want to highlight some of the technologies and strategies available to support the different approaches people employ when interacting with digital media. You need to understand these fundamentals. You need to understand these four fundamentals of how people with disabilities use digital resources helps schools to better develop and implement accessibility standards that are more effective and efficient for all users. Okay, so keep these four, got it here, these four in mind as we talk about this. Okay, so keep this in mind. Okay, so an accessible web. Okay, this is what we're striving for. Yeah, I've been laying the foundation for this. If you've gotten this far, thank you very much for your service. We really appreciate this. What I want to plan out for you now is an accessible web. What is important about this? Okay. Making information available to everyone is perhaps the single defining goal of design. It really is. You're not trying to come up with ways that prevent people from participating. You're working to come up with ways that people can participate. And that's what's important. You want people to be able to participate. Okay? But the problem is, and think about this, is too often accessibility is an afterthought in the digital design process. It's just, we think about it, oh yeah, we'll get to that, or we run out of time, or we think about it at the very end. You need to change your thought process on this, okay? I mean this. Designers often prioritize creating an aesthetically pleasing website or app over making it easily understood by a wide audience. I share this with you, and I shared this in the patent pod issue that just came out a few weeks ago on the YouTube. Is my son took classes during COVID relating to when his business shut down during COVID, related to web design. And their image, and I'm not trying to disparage this because it's a great thing, is they were told that they have to make all web design accessible to someone who, and they used the gold standard was the AARP website, the American Association for Retired Persons, which will start tracking you once you start age 50. They'll find you. Why I say this is that if they figured if you can get someone from AARP to really understand what's going on, you've acquired a good critical mass of what you're going to be doing. Now, that's not the complete one. I've got a better one for you in a minute. But prioritize creating not just an aesthetically pleasing website, but you have to think about making sure it's available for a wide audience. We're dealing with parents, school-age parents who understand the web. Not always. Not always. You have to think about it. There's others who are raising these kids, or English may not be their native language, or individual who is visually impaired. There's a variety of things out there. But digital communication, as we have noticed just in the past 3 years, remember, in March 2020, when the world shut down, we relied so much more on digital accessibility and communication. And so the communication needs are shifting. They're constantly shifting and changing. And this also, the technology using to do that, it's supporting that, has also changed, right? Personally, I'm moving to a job where I work 100% of the time from home. And it's amazing. I'm in my little office right here with my you can see my AirPods, and I'm just here. This is my getup. You don't know what I'm wearing from here down, and that's important. But we've all changed. But digital communication has shifted. Okay. But what I want to think about this is, even with all of these changes that we've been dealing with, this fluctuation, there may be fundamental principles defining what accessible web design can and should be. So we're going to give you some information on this. Don't worry. We're going to give you some web links to pay attention to. Just you wait. To help lead the web to its fullest potential, the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, use the Google, okay? Through their Web Accessibility Initiative, the WAI, the W3C has worked with organizations, experts, and interested individuals around the world to develop recommendations and standards and guidelines for accessible websites, digital documents, and mobile applications. Yeah, so we're getting there. Okay. So pay attention to WAI, Web Accessibility Initiative, and W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. The guidelines support the public to better understand and implement accessibility initiatives and are an excellent foundation which to build accessible web content. There are 4, and I'm gonna talk about these 4, just like I talked about the previous 4. Okay, there are 4 general principles that lay the foundation of accessible web design, and I mean this literally. 4 general principles. Things need to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and you need to have robust digital content. Okay. There are many layers of guidance on how to make this accessible. Okay. And so we have to think about this, okay, and pay attention. Okay? So let me walk you through these 4. Let me just walk you through these 4 so you have a really good understanding of what we're talking about. Okay. Okay. Web content is perceivable if all components are presented to users in ways that they can input and process. Okay. When there's a barrier to accessing information in one format, there should be potential to be easily convert that information to another format that is more readily perceivable by the user. For people who are blind or have low vision, the key is to provide modifications and alternatives for visual content. Modifications could include adding functions that allow people the ability to magnify text or alter the color contrast on a web page in order to better suit their needs. Okay. And this is important. For multimedia content, this could be achieved by providing brief audio descriptions in which there are narratives that describe the important visual details in an image or video. Okay. People who are deaf or hard of hearing require alternatives for audio content. Audio video content can be converted into captions, including directly on the video or included in a text transcript nearby. Doesn't have to be directly on the video. It could be something off to the side. Audio content can also be translated into ASL, American Sign Language, and made it available on a nearby video that accompanies the original. So it doesn't have to there need to be there, just there has to be something available. Okay. So perceivable is a big part of this. Second part about accessible web. A website is operable if all interactive elements and navigational components can be operated in some ways by all users. For people with limited movement, especially those impairs the use of hands or arms, using a mouse to navigate a website might not be possible. Thus, they require an alternate method for controlling a computer. An operable website ensures that all controls and functionality available by mouse are also available by keyboard, as well as other inputs, including touch activation and voice recognition. For users with limited short-term memory loss, some learning disabilities, even low vision, websites include clear headings and labels, provide appropriate cues to finding and navigating through desired content. Okay, so keep that in mind as we talk about this. Right. Okay. So that is important. Right. And so the next one is, okay, the website is understandable to users when the information contained on a web page or digital media, as well as the general functionality of the page, is clear. Language should be straightforward and as simple as possible. This supports understanding across a wide variety of cognitive levels and ensures readability, especially for text-to-speech applications. More complex text can be rich with images and illustrations that support understanding. For users with impacted cognition, it's very important. This practice helps becomes comfortable with the content that can empower them to be able to predict where they can find things. What's important, in 2020, the W3C published a best practice document on how to make digital content more usable for people with cognitive and learning disabilities. The document integrates user stories to illustrate how structure, design, and language choices can make digital content inaccessible. So keep that in mind. And finally, robust. Robust digital content is compatible with past, present, and future technologies and tools, including assistive technology. Websites and web browsers are constantly evolving with new technologies and design techniques alter. They alter all the user experiences. Yet even so, a computer or smartphone from 2003 should be able to reliably read content as easily as a computer from 2023. Even as progress takes place, baseline web content should still remain accessible. And in particular, for assistive technologies, robust web content should support these devices to provide content reliably and present it in ways that the user needs. All people, regardless of ability, are expected to have similar experiences with all digital platforms. And you need to pay attention to the WA guidelines because they help provide a roadmap to achieving this long-term goal. A more universal approach to digital design generates content that improves usability for users in general. Furthermore, I mean this, adhering to these guidelines also succeeds in supporting older adults whose abilities and needs are changing due to aging. I love increased font size. I like color contrast on web pages. They can support users with age-related vision loss or those who have vision loss from birth. However, these four principles alone do not guarantee full accessibility. A more comprehensive understanding of the why and how behind these standards must be understood in order to truly effective and accessible work with digital content. We cannot hope to cover all the intricacies extensively, so we recommend diving more deeply into W3C, WAI guidelines, and other resources in order to more fully understand the many components of digital accessibility standards. Okay. Evaluating for accessibility. Okay. Move on to the next one. Right. How to evaluate. There's three things that I want you to pay attention to as a part of evaluating. Ensuring your school's website and digital materials align with the web accessibility standards outlined by the W3G is an important step towards legal compliance and creating an accessible digital environment. Okay, this is vital. This is a vital part of the process. Ideally, the accessibility of any digital project will be considered early in the project planning. It'll all include also part of the budgeting and the scheduling. Yet when organizations focus solely on conforming to these web accessibility standards, they may miss out on understanding real-world accessibility issues experienced by real-world users. Hold on. Involving people with disabilities from the beginning, and I want to make sure that you pay attention to this because there are some things to pay attention to as a part of this. Should be involve people with disabilities from the beginning of project supports all to better understand accessibility concerns and be more adept at implementing effective accessibility solutions. Accessibility should not be viewed as simply a checklist item, a real life experience. It should just be part of what we're doing. One way to test, all user test, utilizing online resources and trainings is the Microsoft Individually Inclusive Design Teams Toolkits on inclusive design practice. All right. So there's a way to do that. Or the Wave accessibility tool. The Microsoft toolkits are designed to help teams learn the benefits of the inclusive design process through interactive activities that bring attention to recognizing exclusion and learning from diversity. Using the Wave browser extension or online web service, organizations can submit a web page for review and then receive a copy of the review of the page with embedded icons indicate both the positive accessibility features and potential use issues that may or may not be present. This tool does not tell the user whether a web page is accessible or whether it passes the Wave test. Rather, it is a diagnostic tool that can detect the presence or absence of errors. The Wave and Microsoft tools are indeed helpful, yet should not replace the evaluation or direct input of a real user. So hold on. It may be working according to these tools, but you may have a user out there it doesn't work for. And so you need to pay attention to those individuals and pay attention to what they say instead of just saying, "Oh, we've run it through our guidelines," but you need to pay attention to this. Okay. So what I want to think about this is including usability testing users with disabilities in the development process. Okay, real users, real people. Okay. Helps organizations be more efficiently develop accessible products and approaches that work well for real users in real situations. Similar comparisons, and I want to make sure that you understand this, is that when in 1978, we had to start making all buildings more accessible due to Section 504 of the Rehab Act, is that we started to bring in individuals who actually had disabilities to talk about what it was like in the bathrooms, where the things were. Many of us have been to bathrooms where they have this huge bathroom and you're sitting on the toilet and the toilet paper is all the way on the other side of the room. And we're talking 15 feet away. I don't know anyone's arms who are 15 feet long. So you have to think about this. Use real users for real guidance and pay attention to this in real situations. You have to think about this. And that's why we're talking about this. Is think about how learn the fundamentals of how people with disabilities engage with digital content. This can be through focus groups, surveys, online resources. Empathy is an important part of the design process. And think about this. What do you have to think about? Is be the adult in the room, be the one who can support these individuals and be there to help provide an information that can be assistance to these individuals. So that you spend time later looking at things from their perspective. Therefore, the logical next step is identifying a diverse group of individuals who are with a range of experiences who are interested in participating and can provide feedback. Okay. So when I talk about this, is you need to think about this as committing to digital accessibility. Okay. And talk to multiple people. Don't just assume one person knows the answer to everything. Okay. Come up with a feedback group. Think about this. Learn early and often when accessibility concerns are present for them and address them and pay attention to them. And use this advisory committee to find other test users in your community with a wide range of disabilities. Discuss what works for them as part of the content and what could be done for them to tease out key features. Throughout the design and development process, ask the group to review prototypes at multiple points. And it bears repeating, but ensure that you're appropriately compensating this group for their invaluable participation and feedback. Don't just say, we're happy to have you here, actually compensate them. Combining user-centered design with accessibility guidelines from the beginning not only ensures accessibility is provided to all users and disabilities with situations, but also leads to more innovative solutions and therefore the nuanced problems. Just take basic navigation tools, okay? The act of orienting one to a web page and successfully maneuvering around the site to find specific content. Under the operable principle, a web page should be designed so that users can easily find content and determine where they are. We've all encountered websites. We're not sure, and we're trying to do this. I visit schools all the time, and on the first page of many school district web pages, I cannot for the life of me find the address of the school district that I want to go visit. And that's when I go visit it, and when I actually go face to face. So you have to think about this as something about this. By operable principle, a web page we design so it can find the content. This is often easier said than done, and the process requires human input through feedback and user testing. That helps identify specific issues that may have been overlooked. When done well, accessible design empowers and content creators more than just barriers, and instead recognizes the universal experience that these individuals have. Okay, so commit to digital accessibility. Okay, digital content is quickly becoming a mainstay of our lives. Some of us have gone paperless. That's probably what we're doing. I'm finishing up a semester at one of our state university system higher educations, and I'm trying to go paperless as a part of this and do what we can as well. But it's the vast majority of the web and mobile applications to engage people is far from being realized. So pay attention to what is called Web AIM, the Web Accessibility Mind, a component of the Utah State University's Center for Persons with Disabilities. What they did is conducted a widespread accessibility evaluation to determine the current state of web accessibility for people with disabilities. The homepages of the top 1 million websites were accessed through Web Accessibility Engine to look for failures to follow web accessibility guidelines. Of the homepages of these top, pay attention, 1 million websites, and maybe one of yours, 97.8% had detected accessibility guideline failures. The most common failures were low contrast, missing alternative text for images, empty links, empty buttons. You press on something and nothing happens. In 2019, WebAM accessed the website of 100 nonprofit organizations that gave their accessibility to thinking that the nonprofit sector strives to be inclusive and therefore may be more mindful. Failure rates were just as high, with 98% out of 100 homepages containing detectable guidelines. Okay. So when I talk about this, although websites can contrast with web and AIM developers or digital engagement strategists who prioritize digital accessibility and build into their practices, internally, the same schools must realize that inclusion is only sustainable when adopted as a culture, not just a policy. Accessible design and thinking must be integrated more into the culture and design of projects in order for it to be pervasive. Committing to digital accessibility comes from awareness, leadership, and policy. If leadership in an organization does not express their commitment, it's not going to happen. So we need to think about that. The commitment to digital accessibility is essential for schools now more than ever because we reapproach this. So you need to have consistent policy on this. So the next part of this, we're going to talk about some specific court cases that have addressed this and paid attention to this. So actually, I'm going to stop now and take a break. Okay. So keep that in mind. All right. So I just want to make sure that we emphasize that I had a lot of guidance on this and talking to a neighbor of mine. She does not want her name identified, but she provided me, we've sat long, hard conversations on this. It's an important part of what we're doing, and it's an important part of what we're paying attention to. Now, she did not provide me guidance on the next part, the legal part, but I want to make sure that we emphasize that it needs to be a team effort in doing this, and we need to move forward this as a team. It's not just one individual making the changes. We needed to pay attention to that. Okay. All right. Thank you.